Chapter 7 Disaster. Where's my girl? Where's my teeny girl? Daddy came striding up the hill from the mine, ahead of the other men. He swung his lunch bucket invitingly. Ronnie ran to get it, but Daddy said, "No, the treat is for girls only. The treat is for Tina." It was the first time she had left the house. Tina ran to meet Daddy coming home from the big mine. She opened his bucket and found a big fat chocolate bar for a treat. "Oh, Daddy, how wonderful!" cried Tina. "I'll give half to Ronnie." She broke it in half, and she and Ronnie gobbled it up. When they got home, there was Jeff carrying the 2 buckets of Daddy's bath water up the back steps. With the coming of spring, things began to look better again. Daddy and many of the other men had been called back to work in the big mine. Now the mine whistle blew for the changes of shifts each day. Now the air was filled with coal dust again. And the busy coal cars went chugging in and out of the valley behind the smoky steam engine every day. Life resumed its usual pattern. The strain left the women's faces, and the happiness was reflected even in the children. When Tina was able to walk again, Grandma Ferris asked her to come and stay for a week before she went back to school. Tina clapped her hands when Mama said she could go. It was always fun at Grandma's house, and she would be near the ponies. Would Bright Eyes remember her? Now that the pony's leg was well again, would Bright Eyes give her a ride on his back? There were so many things to do at Grandma's. When Tina stepped out of Uncle Jack's car, she smelled cookies baking. The kitchen was warm and sweet and spicy when she went in. She was just in time to help Grandma roll out the last batch. She cut the cookies in rounds with the cookie cutter. She took them out of the oven when they were brown. "Grandma, why do you always have cookies, and Mama none?" asked Tina. All her life Tina had come to Grandma's house and found cookies waiting. "Gramp has his pension," said Grandma. "That gives us more money for groceries than your Mama has when Daddy is out of work." "Oh," said Tina, "no cookies is one of the hardships, isn't it?" "It doesn't hurt us to learn to do without things we want," said Grandma. "Food too?" asked Tina. "Just the extras, like cookies," said Grandma. "Other food is a necessity." Tina heard a loud pounding on the roof. "What's that, Grandma? A woodpecker?" Grandma laughed. "Uncle Jack's a pretty big woodpecker, don't you think?" "Is it Uncle Jack?" asked Tina. "What's he doing?" "He and Gramp are putting new shingles on," said Grandma. "Jack is doing most of it. I won't let Gramp climb on the ladder." "Can Uncle Jack pound with his broken arm?" "Yes, it needs exercise to strengthen it," said Grandma. "Can I help?" asked Tina. "You? I should say not," said Grandma. "I don't want anything to happen to you while you're here. I'm going to feed you up and put a little flesh on your bones. You've grown so skinny, I'm afraid the wind will blow you away. You'll have to be stronger before you can go back to school." The rat-a-tat-tat on the roof continued. "Run out to the chicken coop and bring in the eggs," said Grandma. Tina found 6 eggs in the nest and brought them in her skirt. Grandma beat one of them into a glass of fresh milk. She gave it to Tina to drink. "Oh, how good," said Tina. "I could drink a gallon." "You will have it every day while you are here," said Grandma. The very next morning, Tina went out to see the ponies. To her joy and delight, Bright Eyes came running to meet her. Tina held out a lump of sugar. Bright Eyes nuzzled it first, then ate it. Tina put her arm around the pony's neck. "You remember me, don't you, Bright Eyes?" Grandpa helped the girl get on the pony's back and led him as she rode round the pasture. "Will you take Bright Eyes back to the mine again?" asked Tina. "His leg is still too stiff," said Grandpa. "The vet said it was a wonder he recovered. We had to get a new pony to work with Diamond. His name is Knothead. He's a hard-headed one." Tina did not dare to say how glad she was. She patted Bright Eyes on the back and loved him more than ever. Every morning and evening she rode the pony round the pasture. Soon the pony began to trot with her and then to gallop. The pony was good and obedient and made no trouble at all. In the evenings Tina did her lessons with Uncle Jack, who said, "Helen doesn't want you to miss a whole winter of school, so you must work hard to catch up." Uncle Jack made the work seem like play, so it was fun. One by one the days went by. The trees were budding out, and early blossoms were opening. The dark dinginess of winter began to fade away in the Coal Camp Valley, with the brightness of the spring sunshine. Then one day it was cloudy. Thick, heavy clouds hung low in the valley. Dim lights shone in all the little houses, for it grew dark soon after midday. Then the rain began to fall, cold, heavy, drenching rain. Sometimes it would stop, only to start in again with greater force. The feeling of spring vanished with the chill of cold. Tina could not go home at the end of her week. Grandma did not want her to get wet and catch cold. It was better to stay inside, secure and dry in the warmth and comfort of the big heater stove. Uncle Jack had finished patching the roof just in time. There were no more leaks, and Grandma was glad. "You can't go home until the rain stops," said Grandma. So day after day, Tina waited. Like Mama, Grandma had no telephone, so Tina could not talk to her family, and she began to feel homesick. Was Daddy still working at the big mine? Had Ronnie's front tooth come out, the one that was loose? Was baby Letty walking yet? Uncle Chick came in now and then. He said all was well at home, but gave no details. His entire concern was with the mines. He reported that all the pony mines were flooded with water, and none of them were working. He had heard a rumor that Linden No. 3 was flooding too, but Grandpa and Uncle Jack refused to believe it. The rains kept on and on. They were so bad that most of the children stopped going to school. Uncle Jack brought this news from Helen Sanford, so Tina felt better about having to miss. Then one morning, when Tina got up, she looked out of the window across the road. Beyond Grandma's chicken house and yard stood the big mountain of the slate dump, where she had had so many happy hours of play. Way, way up at the top, she had seen birch trees growing and wondered if she could climb up there and slide down. She had never tried it for fear of landing in Grandma's chicken yard or on the front porch in Grandpa's lap. Now she could hardly believe her eyes. What had happened in the night? The road was gone. The chicken house and yard were gone. Grandma's flower bed and the front porch were gone, covered up with slate. The whole big mountain of the slate dump had come sliding down. There were the birch trees now, just a little way up. They were bending over, all topsy-turvy. Tina remembered the last time she had played at the top, how she and Jeff had thrown stones and tried to hit Grandpa's chimney. The rain, it had washed all the slate down. Her old fear returned. Was it going to cover up Grandpa's house and bury it? Tina ran to the side window. There was the Kruppa's house, a little higher up. The slate dump was coming down on it too. It was over the roof in the back, and most of the yard was gone. Were the Kruppas up? Did they know the danger? Where was Hilda? Tina wanted to tell her to hurry up and get out. She pulled on her clothes as quickly as she could and ran downstairs. The rooms were dark there, those on the mountain side by the dump. Through the back kitchen windows overlooking the valley, she had a fleeting glimpse of a red sun trying to rise. Was the rain over at last? Out through the side door, Tina ran without looking back. "Hey, where are you going, Sugar Pie?" A strong hand pulled her by the arm and dragged her back indoors. "You can't go running off like that so early in the morning," said Uncle Jack's kindly voice. "But Hilda Kruppa, I've got to wake her up before the slate dump falls on her." Now, Uncle Jack brought Tina in the kitchen and put her in a chair. Grandma was fixing breakfast, just as usual. It was going to be diced potatoes, fried with onions, ham and red gravy, hot biscuits with butter. Grandpa was shaving by the kitchen sink. Everything was just as usual. The sun came up over the mountain to the east and flooded the sky, as if trying to tell the people in the coal camp that the worst was over. Was nobody going to do anything? Were Grandma and Grandpa going to sit still and let their house be covered up? "But look," cried Tina, "look at the slate dump. It's coming right down on us. I want to go home. Oh, I want to go home." She began to cry as if her heart would break. Grandma took her in her arms and quieted her. Then Grandma and Grandpa and Uncle Jack explained. As soon as it dried off a little, they were all going down to Christina's house in the valley. It looked as if the rain was over, and when the roads were dry enough, the mine company would send its trucks to haul the slate away. The Kruppas had already gone to their kinfolk, and other families in the endangered houses were going soon. The slate would not slide any more if the rain stopped. "It won't cover Gramps' house up?" asked Tina. "No," said Grandpa. "It was a close shave, and we're lucky. Mine is the nicest house with the best view of the valley. I don't want to move any more than you do." So they all went down the hill to Christina's house in the valley to stay until the slate was removed. Uncle Jack went off to stay at Uncle Chick's in Crabapple Hollow, and Mama made up the davenport in the front room for Grandma and Grandpa. Tina was happy to be at home again. A few days passed, happily and calmly, and then the quiet was shattered by the unexpected. "What time is it, Mama?" asked Tina one day. "Almost 3:30, said Mama. "The whistle will blow soon." "Can I go to meet Daddy?" asked the girl. "Not in this rain," said Mama. It was raining again. The spring rains had never been so heavy. "You stay inside and keep dry," said Grandma. "We don't want you to catch cold." Dinner was nearly ready, and Mama was heating water for Daddy's bath. The family waited and talked. Mama looked at the clock. "Why, it's almost 4," she said. "I didn't hear the whistle blow, and Daddy's not here." She turned to Grandma. Suddenly a loud blast sounded. It was the mine whistle, and it kept on and on. Mama and Grandma looked at each other, and Tina saw fear in their faces. "Something's happened at the mine," whispered Mama. "The day shift hasn't come off. The disaster whistle blows only for one of 3 things: a slate fall, a flood, or an explosion," said Grandma. Suddenly a siren was heard. Jeff and Tina ran to the front window. Down the hill road from Mapleton came an ambulance at top speed. It turned at the corner and went down to the Big Tipple. Several other speeding cars followed. "Where's Daddy?" asked Tina. "Why doesn't he come home?" Grandpa came out to the kitchen. "I'll go down to the mine," he said. "Can I go too, Gramp?" asked Tina. Mama reached for her coat and scarf, but Grandpa took them from her and hung them back in the closet. "None of you can go," he said. "No one but Jeff. If there's trouble, they don't want women and children around. We'll let you know when we find out anything." As soon as Grandpa left, Mama hurried over to Miss Bryant's house to see if she had heard any news by telephone. After a while, she came back. "The mine is flooded, and the men are trapped," she said. "They were cut off at 1 o'clock, when water broke through the roof, bringing mud and rocks with it." She turned to Grandma. "There's that refuse pond high on the mountainside. They dammed it up for a dumping ground for waste from the coal washing machine. All this rain filled it to overflowing. The weight of the water collapsed the 400 foot of rock and earth that formed a wall between the pond and the mine passageway. The mine's full of water." Mama began to cry, and Grandma put her arms around her. "They'll get the men out," said Grandma. "Oh, how many times I've been through this kind of thing before. Each time I think I can never take it again, but each time God gives me the strength I need. Don't lose heart, Mary Kate. Walter will come out safe. Keep your faith. That will help." Tina knew Grandma was right, so she stopped crying too. They all sat at the window and watched cars go down the hill toward the mine. It was still raining hard. About 5 o'clock, Jeff came home with news. "They are going to get them out," he cried excitedly. "There's lots of people there. They've got pumps running to pump the water out." 7 mine inspectors came and went in with the 2 foremen to hunt for another way for the men to come out. The main hallway is completely blocked. Carl Kruppa, Hilda's father, who was laid off 6 months ago, says he knows how to get them out. He was section foreman in there for 15 years. He's taking a bunch of men in to try to find it. "Have they heard from the men?" asked Mama. "Are they still alive?" "They haven't heard anything yet," said Jeff, "but a man told me they are going to bore a hole down to them from the top of the mountain for food and a telephone wire. They think they know about where the men are. They're waiting now for a bulldozer to come to cut a road through the trees and bushes to the top." "Oh, that'll be too slow," said Mama. "It'll be too late." About 7 o'clock, Grandpa came back. Mama met him at the door. "Have they heard from the men?" she asked. "Are they still alive?" "The mine superintendent says he's sure they are," said Grandpa. He said he won't call it a disaster because he feels sure the men are alive and unhurt. He said the dispatcher was in contact with the motor crew and the mine foreman just before the power went off, and all the men in the mine were reported to be at the face. That's farther in and higher up than the point of the break, where the water came in. They've pumped the water out, but it's left behind a river of jelly-like sludge that's hard to get through. How long will it take? Asked Mama. The mine superintendent said that rescue is still 24 hours away at least, said Grandpa. He'll be there all night, said Mama, her eyes filling with tears. Waiting and doing nothing is hardest of all, said Grandma. There's nothing any of us can do, said Grandpa. Everything is being done that can be done. Chick and Jack are down there helping. I must go back. He took the sandwiches and coffee Mama made and left. That night no one wanted to go to bed. The children fell asleep in their chairs, so Mama tucked them in bed. Lights were on in all the company houses, and cars kept coming and going. Toward morning, Mama and Grandma lay down to get some rest. In the morning, Grandpa came back. The news was just the same. Everything possible was being done. No message had come from the men, but it was believed they were safe. The rain slackened, and that made the rescue work easier. Tina felt it was the longest day she had ever lived through. Jeff and Grandpa stayed at the mine, coming home only for food. Mama and Celia decided to do a big washing, so Grandma helped. Neighbors stopped in, equally tense and worried, asking questions and making predictions. Ronnie kept asking, "When is Daddy coming home?" Tina sat in a chair by the side window and watched. She wanted to be the first one to see Daddy when he came. She wanted to run to meet him. "There won't be any treat this time," she said. "I'll let Daddy eat my treat while he's waiting to be dug out." Grandma smiled. Another night passed and another day came. Before breakfast, while it was still dark, Miss Bryant came in and said she was going to the mine. Mama put on her coat and scarf and told the children to get their wraps. "I've waited long enough," she said. "I'm going down there too. Jeff and Tina, you come along. If anything's happened to Daddy, we want to be there." Everything was different and strange at Linden number 3. Cars were parked all around the mine buildings, and a row of ambulances stood waiting. People stood around talking and waiting outside and inside the mine buildings. Nobody seemed to know anything. Jeff went off with Cliff Krause and Sammy Blagg, but Tina stayed with her mother. "I couldn't stand it to stay at home any longer," said Miss Bryant. "Something's bound to happen today," said Mama, "and I want to be here to know the worst, or the best." She wiped her eyes and tried to smile. Inside the waiting room, next to the lamp house, there was a fire in a coal stove. A row of Mapleton Boy Scouts with stretchers sat on a bench, waiting in case they were needed in rescue. 24 lamps have been checked out. The lamp man kept telling people who came up, so we know there are 24 men missing. Tina felt tired, so she leaned against Mama's shoulder. She must have fallen asleep, for suddenly she was wakened. Mama had jumped up, and she and Miss Bryant were rushing toward the mine office. A messenger from the mine had just gone in. Newspaper reporters crowded close, and after a short time, the general manager of the mine came out. "Gentlemen," he said, "the workers have been located, and all 24 are in good physical condition. The reporters crowded closer to get details. Karl Kruppe, a former foreman, took a small crew of 9 into an abandoned section of the mine in search of a bypass. They found it and reached the men, who are now on their way out. A cheer went up from reporters and bystanders as everybody hurried to the mine portal. Tina held tightly to Mama's hand as they all crowded close. They waited a long time. Then they saw the men coming. Dirty and hungry, but uninjured, the happy group of trapped miners walked into the cold light of dawn and sniffed the fresh air. "Gimme a cigarette," begged Ben Hurley, the first man out. "2 days since I had a smoke." "Coffee, a cup of coffee," shouted Henry Bryant as he fell into his wife's waiting arms. Then Tina saw Daddy. She knew him even if his face was black. He looked up into the sky and said for all to hear, "I never thought I'd see the light of day again. Thank you, good Lord." The next minute, Tina was in his arms, and Mama too. Mama took his black face between her 2 hands and kissed him in front of everybody. All around there was a great hubbub. Waiting women took black-faced men in their arms and cried tears of relief and happiness. Newsmen came close and took pictures. Karl Kruppe was a hero for bringing the men out. The mine chief from Charleston, who had spent 2 days and nights in rescue work without rest, was another, and Willie Johnson, a colored miner, who had told jokes and sung songs to the imprisoned men, was a third. They were all given a warm and loving welcome. The rain was over and a warm sun came out as Daddy and Mama and Tina and Jeff walked back up the hill, followed by Grandpa. Daddy gave his bucket to Tina. "Don't you want your treat, teeny girl?" he asked. "But I thought you ate it all up," said Tina, "when you had to go hungry for so long." "No," said Daddy, "I saved it for you." Tina opened the bucket and ate the stale, mine-soaked sandwich she found there. "It's the best treat I ever tasted," she said. Chapter 8. Summer. "Oh, Gramp, I can't believe it," said Tina, hugging him tightly. "I can have Bright Eyes for my very own." Grandpa Ferris nodded. "That stiff leg will keep him from ever being a good mine pony," said Grandpa. "He can never work again." Tina put her arm around the pony's neck. "Do you hear that, Bright Eyes?" she whispered. "You are my pony now. You don't have to go in the mine any more." Tina was feeling stronger now than she had been all winter. Jeff and Uncle Jack built a shed for Bright Eyes in the backyard. By day, the pony grazed in the yard, eating the grass and weeds. All the children in the street came to have rides. Bright Eyes was gentle and let them do as they pleased with him. After the rains were over, spring came quickly to the coal camp. The mine company trucks hauled all the slate away from the houses on the mountain road. The grass turned green, and the trees put out fresh new leaves. People began planting flower beds and gardens. Daddy took down the coal heater and moved it out to the back porch. One day, when the children came home from school, Mama met them at the door with buckets in her hand. "Go get water," she said. Tina hated wash days, but she and Jeff went to the spigot in Miss Murphy's yard, crossing 3 other yards to get there. Queenie went along, sniffing at their heels. Miss Murphy was getting ready to wash tomorrow too, so Peggy was at the spigot, filling her buckets. Peggy did not hurry, so Jeff and Tina stood patiently and waited. Queenie began to growl. She saw the Murphy's cat and went after it. The cat arched its back and spat, then turned and ran. Cat and dog disappeared under the Murphy's house. "You take that dog of yours out of our yard," screamed Peggy. Jeff called Queenie, but she did not come. Peggy left her buckets, took a stick and threw it under the house, trying to hit the dog. "Come now, quick," said Jeff. "Let's get our water and go. Queenie can take care of herself." When Peggy came back to the spigot, Jeff and Tina were gone. They had learned how to avoid a quarrel with Peggy. Before they went to school next day, the wash water was on the stove in a number 4 tub heating. Washing was an all-day job for both Mama and Celia. When Tina came home that afternoon, Mama's clotheslines were full of clothes, and so was a long one of Miss Bryant's next door. Mama was scrubbing the back porch and steps with lye water to make them white and clean. "Run and see if the clothes are dry, Tina," called Mama, but Tina had other things on her mind. Hilda Cruppa and Cousin Day had come home with her to help fix up Tina's summer playhouse. The little coal shed out by the front fence had been emptied of coal, so the girls decided to clean it up. They brought buckets of water and scrubbed and scrubbed. It took a long time to get the coal dust out. Then Tina brought a hammer and nailed pieces of red cloth up at the little window for curtains. The girls brought in 2 old chairs, a broken-down couch, and a table for furniture. Day put old bottles and broken dishes on the table, and Tina brought a can of old coffee grounds that Mama had saved for her. Hilda poured water on them to make play coffee. Suddenly, a loud rapping was heard at the coal shed door. The girls opened it, and there stood Jeff and Virgil Tucker on his back. "Give us a sandwich," begged the boys. "We're hungry." Cousin Trig came running up, with Cliff Krause on his back. "Give us something to eat," the boys cried. "Go away, go away." Hilda came out with the broom and chased. The boys went galloping away, and Day and Tina at their heels. Then the girls came back to rest. "Those mean old boys," they said. From the house, Tina brought the big old rag doll that Grandma had made for her when she was little. It was named Annabelle. Tina was making a bed for the doll when she heard the whistle of the afternoon train. "Woo, woo!" Tina called Mama. "Come, help get the clothes in quick. The train is coming." The girls ran out to help as Celia and Mama rushed to take the clothes off the lines, so they would not get covered with cinders. Miss Bryant came out and helped too. Choo, choo, choo! The long train moved slowly through the valley, puffing smoke and scattering cinders as it went. Tina and Hilda and Day grabbed armfuls of dry clothes and ran with them to the back porch. They stood on the back porch and waved to the engineer, who waved back. When the excitement was over, the girls ran to the playhouse, where a surprise met their eyes. Everything was upset. Chairs and table were turned over. Dishes and bottles were spilled. Only the red curtains were still in place. Tina could hardly believe her eyes. "It was Peggy Murphy, I bet," said Hilda. "No, it was those boys," said Day. "Where's my doll? Where's Annabella?" asked Tina. There was no sign of the doll in the playhouse. The girls ran out to look. The boys were nowhere to be seen. They ran over to the Murphys and saw Peggy up on the porch roof. "What you doin', Peggy?" asked Tina. "Gettin' my poor cat down," said Peggy. "That mean old dog, Queenie, chased her up here last night, and she's afraid to climb down." Peg Murphy," called Miss Murphy from the window. "You come right down off that roof before you fall and break your neck." It was clear that Peggy knew nothing of the damage in the playhouse, so the girls came back again. There in the bushes beside the coal shed they found Annabelle. Tina looked the doll over. She was dirty and her clothes were torn. "Let's play she's dead and have a funeral for her," said Tina. "Oh, that'll be fun," said Day. They found an old cardboard box and filled it with rags. They put the doll in and closed it. They picked wild flowers and stuck them on the box with pins. They dug a hole, put the box in, and covered it with dirt. They sang hymns and put flowers on Annabelle's grave. After the funeral, Tina brought Bright Eyes out from her shed, and they rode the pony round and round the yard. "Where'd you get that pony?" asked Peggy Murphy, coming up. "Gramp gave him to me," said Tina. "He's just an old wore-out mine pony," said Peggy. "He's no good, or your Gramp would have sold him for $300. "He's good enough for me," said Tina. She slapped the reins and trotted on. Hilda, running behind, shouted back, "You're just jealous, Peggy Murphy, because you can't have a ride." Day called Mama from the porch. "It's time for you to go home. Aunt Effie will be looking for you." Day turned to Tina. "Let's dig Annabella up first." Tina jumped off Bright Eyes, took a shovel and dug. The girls shook the dirt off the doll, fixed the furniture in the playhouse, and put the doll to bed. Then they came out and closed the door tight. "I'll get a lock and lock it," said Tina, "to keep those bad boys out." It was wonderful not to have to go to school anymore. School was out now, and the children were enjoying the freedom of summer. One day when Tina went on an errand to the company store, she rode Bright Eyes. All the children along the way begged for rides, but she said she had to hurry home. As she came past the Tucker's house, Virgil came out with Jeff. "Give us a ride," begged Virgil. "No," said Tina, "you boys tore up my playhouse." "We'll do it again if you don't let us ride your pony," said Jeff. Tina shook her head. She slapped Bright Eyes on the back and went bouncing down the street. Looking back, she watched the boys start off in the opposite direction of the bicycles. Queenie was following them. "I wonder where they are going," she said to herself. She went to the store and did her errand. She rode on home and soon forgot about the boys, for Hilda Kruppa was waiting for her. The little Hurley girls, Betty and Barbara, were there too. "Let's go down to the creek," said Hilda. "I'm hot. Let's go wading." "Oh, the creek's dirty, and our mamas don't want us to get wet," said Tina. "But they're not washing coal today," said Barbara. "The mine's been closed for 2 days. The water will be clean." The chance was too good to miss. The girls ran down across the back lot. Arbutus Creek ran in a deep gully behind the row of houses not far from the railroad track. At Linden No. 3, they pumped water out of the mine, used it to wash coal at the tipple, then dumped it into Arbutus Creek. So the beautiful wild flowers that once grew there had died, and the banks were covered with black slimy mud. On days when the mine did not operate, in a single evening the water fed by live springs would clear up. The children liked to play in the creek on Saturdays and other days when the company did not run coal at the mine. The water looked clean and cool, so the girls were soon wading. The June sun shone hot and bright on their backs. "You push me in and wet me," said Hilda to Tina, "and then I'll pull ye in." Tina laughed. "I'll blame ye if Mama scolds me." Oh, what fun it was to splash and jump in the creek! The girls threw water on each other and got soaking wet. Even though the water looked clean, the bed of the creek was thick with coal sediment, so the girls came out black. They looked at each other in dismay. "You're black as coal," said Tina to Hilda. "You look like a coal miner," said Hilda to Tina. "We all look like coal miners," said Betty to Barbara. The sky clouded over, and a summer storm came up. It began to rain, and the wind began to blow. The girls ran back to the Wilson house as fast as they could go. Now they were wetter than ever. "You look like drowned rats," said Mama, laughing. "I've got some bath water ready." Hilda and the Hurley girls ran on home, while Tina took a bath. Supper was ready, and Daddy was waiting. Mama went out on the back porch and called Jeff, but he did not come. "Where did Jeff go?" she asked Tina. "I saw him at the Tuckers when I came from the store," said Tina. "He and Virgil wanted to ride Bright Eyes, but I wouldn't let them. They rode their bikes up Slate Dump Hill. I don't know where they went." "The rain is over," said Mama. "Go out and see if you can find him." Tina ran up the road. She stopped at the Bryants, the Hurleys, and the Murphys, but no one had seen Jeff. Then she came to the Tuckers. "I haven't seen Virgil since noon," said Miss Tucker. "He ate quickly, then said he was going out to play with Jeff. They took their bikes and went off somewhere. I expect they'll be back soon." Tina went home. "Miss Tucker says the boys will be back soon," she reported. "It's getting late," said Mama. "I wish Jeff would come." "Queenie's gone too, Mama," said Tina. "Oh, she tags everywhere with Jeff," said Mama. Chapter 9. Lost. Meanwhile, when Jeff and Virgil left Tina, they rode on up over Slate Dump Hill and came into Crabapple Hollow. "You go home, Queenie," called Jeff to his dog. Twice he stopped and threw stones, but the dog kept coming. "Queenie's sulky and mean," Jeff told Virgil. "She won't mind, only me." "She's not minding you now," said Virgil. "Oh well, let her come," said Jeff. "She'll soon get tired and go off home." The boys passed the Krause's house and called for Cliff. Cliff and his mother came to the door. "Why don't you stay here and play?" Miss Krause asked. "We told Trig we'd come over in the holler," said Virgil. "Aw, come on, Cliff." "My bike's broke," said Cliff. "Can't you walk?" asked Jeff. "We'll ride slow." But Cliff and his mother went in and shut the door. "He's an old mama baby," said Virgil as they went on. The boys stopped at Sammy Blagg's house and found him chopping wood in the yard. "Come on over to Crabapple Holler, Sammy," called Virgil, "so we can beat you up." All the younger boys in the coal camp hated Sammy because he was a bully and liked picking on them. "I'll take you on one at a time and tear you to pieces," said Sammy, but he did not come. He went back to chopping wood. The boys went on. and at Grandpa Ferris's house, Grandpa held them. "Where you boys off to?" "Goin' over to Trigg's house, Gramp," called Jeff. He turned to Virgil. "Let's hurry so he don't start asking questions." They rode on. Crabapple Hollow was a valley between two mountains, and had a dirt road that followed a small brook. There were houses on both sides, with vegetable gardens and small fields of corn between. When the boys came to Uncle Chick's house, Trigg met them at the gate. "I thought you were never coming," he said. "We had a little trouble," said Jeff. "The other guys backed out and wouldn't come. Cliff Krause said his bike was broken down. He's too lazy to think of walking," said Virgil. "Where's Sammy?" asked Trigg. This was to be our chance to clean up on him. "He was scared to come," said Jeff. "Even if he's bigger than we are, he knew all of us together could whip him. That really scared him, so he didn't come." "Well," said Trigg, "there's enough, I suppose. I've got everything ready. Did you bring your hatchet, Jeff?" "Yes, and it's brand new," said Jeff. "Daddy bought it for me when he went to Mapleton last week." He pulled the hatchet from under his belt and showed it proudly. The boys went to a shed behind Trigg's house. Trigg had hard shell bank caps for Jeff and Virgil. He wore a cloth cap himself. He had a miner's carbide lamp and a package of matches. "Where'd you get it, the lamp?" asked Jeff. "Uncle Jack gave it to me," said Trigg. "Is it any good?" asked Virgil. "Bet it's wore out." Trigg lighted the carbide light to show the boys, then put it out. "Let's go," he said. "It's late already." He brought his bicycle, and they started out. "Trigg, Trigg," someone was calling. Trigg turned and saw his sister, Day-Day, running out after him. "Where you boys going?" called Day-Day. Trigg pedaled faster. "Let's not answer," he said. "Let's pretend we didn't hear. She don't need to know where we are going." He looked around later and saw Day-Day going back into the house. The boys rode past the houses to the head of the hollow, and at Trigg's suggestion hid their bicycles in a tangle of bushes at the bottom of the mountain. "Nobody'll find them there," said Trigg. "Nobody will guess we're up here at all." Trigg knew just where he was going, and Jeff and Virgil followed. It was a rough, hard climb up the mountain side, but Trigg called it a trail. The boys pushed brush and trees aside, clambered over rocks, and crawled on their knees. Sometimes Jeff chopped off a branch to get by. "Where you taking us?" growled Jeff. "There's no trail here. Nobody's been up this mountain in 100 years. "Aw gee, this is no fun, Trigg," complained Virgil. "Every step I take I slip back 2 steps, so I'll soon end up at the bottom." "Keep coming, boys," said Trigg. "Just wait till we get to the top." "I want to be a miner," said Jeff, "not a mountain climber." "You can be a miner if you get to the top," promised Trigg. Fallen branches blocked the way and had to be chopped. The boys climbed, crawled, and pulled themselves up, getting scratched and bruised in the process. It took more than an hour to get to their goal. "Well, here we are," said Trigg. A dog yelped nearby. Jeff looked, and there was Queenie. She had followed them all the way up to the mountain. He gave her a pat, wondered how she had made it. "Good girl, Queenie," he said. Ahead was the portal of an abandoned mine. Above, a lot of fallen rocks. The old cement face could be seen. There used to be a fence here, said Trigg, but somebody tore it down. The fence was supposed to keep people and animals out, he grinned. Off at one side was an old slate dump dropping into the valley, with a water hole behind it. The boys went over to look. The water's crystal clear, said Jeff, looking down. It's real deep, too, said Virgil. Let's have a swim. It won't be cold on a hot day like this. No, said Trigg. We're going in the mine. That's what we came for. They came back to the portal, but it was blocked by fallen rocks. How we gonna get in? Asked Jeff. It's closed up. I'll show you, said Trigg. I've been here before. Trigg lighted the carbide lamp, exchanged his cap for Virgil's hard shell, and put it on. He led the boys to the fan entry, pushed some rocks and brush aside, and made his way in. The two other boys followed. The daylight at their backs soon faded as they went. Farther in, they walked a short distance, then came to a place where the headroom was low. Down on your knees, boys, said Trigg. Here we go. Trigg was the smallest of the three boys, but the most daring. It was his idea to explore the mine, so he became the leader. The old mine was a big one and had been closed down for over 5 years. The roof timbers had rotted down, and some passages were filled with fallen rock and slate. When the boys came to rusty coal car tracks, they knew they were in the main hallway. Headroom was low here, so they had to hunch over. Maybe we'll find a shuttle buggy, said Virgil. Then we can take a ride. Who'll push it? Asked Jeff. We should have brought Bright Eyes to pull it, said Virgil, laughing. Now their eyes were getting accustomed to the darkness. The inside of the mine was black with a darkness that had never known daylight or the brightness of the sun. Even so, the boys could see nothing ahead but the feeble circle of light that shone from the lamp on Trigg's cap. Why didn't you get lamps for us too? Asked Jeff. I thought you'd have sense enough to bring your own, said Trigg. You never told us to, said Virgil. Trigg had been pushing ahead eagerly and excitedly. Suddenly he got tired and stopped to rest a while. He waited for the other boys to come up. They sat quietly talking, when they heard a rustle of movement. What's that? Asked Virgil. A bat or a rat, said Trigg. A light yelp came, and there was Queenie with her tongue out, panting. A dog, you mean, said Jeff. He took Queenie on his lap. You found us, didn't ya, old girl? Gee, it's spooky in here, said Virgil. Let's go back out. I've seen enough. This is no fun at all. Don't be a quitter, said Trigg. We haven't even started exploring. I came this far alone, the other time I was up here. Jeff was ready to leave too, so in spite of Trigg, the boys turned around and found their way back through the fan entry. They came outdoors to daylight again, but a storm had come up and it was raining hard. We'll have to stay inside to keep dry, said Jeff. They went part way in, fooled around, and waited. Then they came back to the entry. It was only drizzling now. Jeff went outside and looked around. I think the storm's over, he said. Gee, boys, there's a snake. On top of the cement face of the main portal lay a snake curled in a circle. Gimme your axe, Jeff, said Trigg. He climbed up and killed the snake. Then he went in the fan entry again. You guys comin'? He called. "I said I was going to explore this mine, and I'm gonna do it." "Let's go back in," said Virgil. Virgil went first, and Jeff followed. They crawled for a while, and Trig said, "This is as far as we came before." "No, it's different," said Virgil. "I didn't hit my head on the top so often." "Well, there's miles more to explore," said Trig. "Come on. Maybe we'll find a treasure or something. Besides coal, there's gold and silver, and all kinds of precious stones embedded in rocks." "We might get lost," said Virgil. "Let's go back." "Aw, come on," coaxed Trig. "If you don't come farther in, I'll put my carbide light out." "Then we wouldn't know where we were going," said Jeff. "So you better stay with me and the light," said Trig. They crawled on. The headroom was getting lower. "Say, this sure was low coal in through here," said Jeff. "The miners had to lie down on their stomachs to dig it." Jeff was not enjoying himself much, but he tried to be cheerful. The boys laughed. Then Virgil said, "The roof must have fell. That's why it's so low here. It might fall still more." "This is no fun," said Jeff. "We've come far enough," said Virgil. "Let's go back. I know all I want to know about the inside of a mine." No, come on," said Trig. "We're not halfway in." Jeff and Virgil did not want to be quitters, so they kept on, following where Trig led. "We'll soon come out on the other side of the mountain," promised Trig. "That's where they used to take the coal out. Don't you remember? The tipple's over on the Kelton side, down by the railroad track. We'll come out there and go home by the railroad." "But we left our bikes on this side," said Jeff. Trig kept stubbornly on, but they did not come to an opening. No signs of daylight appeared. Queenie came part way with them and then disappeared. "Queenie's gone back out," said Jeff. "Queenie's got sense." "Queenie's got more sense than Trig's got," said Virgil. "Trig, are you taking us out on the Kelton side?" "Sure," said Trig, "as soon as I find the opening." "I want to go back to the side where we came in," said Jeff. "Our bikes are down at the foot of the mountain." They came to a wall of coal and could go no further. "Now we've got to go back," said Jeff. "What did you bring us here for, Trig?" Trig knew now there was no way out ahead. He knew now they were lost, but he would not admit it. "Just follow me," he said, trying to be brave. They turned and started back. Trig tried all the different entries, but they all led to dead ends, and they had to come back. Queenie had not gone out after all. She kept coming up to Jeff, barking, and going away again. Once she got hold of Jeff's overalls and tugged. "Let me alone, Queenie," said Jeff. "That dog's crazy. She keeps pulling at me. Gee, I'm thirsty." They came to a pool of water, and they all drank, even though they knew it was dirty. "You're lost, Trig. I know you are," said Virgil in a scared voice. Trig started to threaten the boys again, but now all his bravado was gone. "No, I'm not lost," he said, but his voice trembled. Queenie pulled at Jeff again. Then she started toward the pool. Jeff put his arm in the water, and it was deeper than he could reach. The dog swam through the water and left them. "Maybe Queenie knows the way out," said Virgil. "Sometimes dogs are smart and know more than people do." "Not that dumb Queenie," said Trig. "We can't swim after her through that water," said Jeff. "It's over our heads." "Where do we go now?" Trig started off in the other direction. He came to an opening 18 inches high. He was so thin he crawled through easily, but the two other boys had a tight squeeze. The going was rough now. The top had fallen, the rocks were slanting, and water kept dripping off the roof. It fell on their backs, covered only by thin t-shirts, and made them cold and wet. Trig's carbide lamp had a blaze only a quarter-inch long. It shone for only about 2 feet ahead and did not help much. Suddenly Virgil called, "Gosh, my foot, I'm caught." While sliding down over some rocks, his foot became wedged between two of them. He tugged and tugged, but could not get it out. Tired and frightened, he began to cry. "Don't be a crybaby," said Jeff. Trig and Jeff came back to help. They unlaced Virgil's shoe and took his foot out. Then Virgil pulled the shoe out of the crack and put it on again. It was a tennis shoe, soaking wet. The boys tried to go on again, but were tired and discouraged. "Trig, Ferris," said Jeff, "we're lost and you know it. You brought us in here, now you show us the way out." Trig did not answer. "I know I've crawled 30 miles, said Virgil. "I'm getting hungry, it must be supper time." "Oh, what'll my mother say?" Queenie found them again and came up barking. "Shut up, you crazy dog," said Trig crossly. No one, least of all Trig, guessed that the dog was trying to lead the boys out of the mine. They kept on crawling and crawling. At last they came to a big cement face. Inside, a wide hallway. It was higher here, so Trig opened a half-rotted door and went inside. There was a box in the room with boards on it. Trig read the words, "First Aid," and knew it must be the old first aid room of the mine. Perhaps they stored the powder here. Trig read the words, and the next minute the carbide light went out. That was the last straw. Trig's courage left him. Tired and exhausted, he fell to the ground and refused to talk. Outside the door, Jeff told Virgil, "Don't go in there. If we go in there, they'll never find us." Virgil whispered, "Do you think they'll come for us?" Jeff said, "Sure, my dad will come," but in his heart he was not so sure. How would Dad ever find them way off in an abandoned mine on the top of Deerfoot Mountain? Jeff had been told so often to stay away from old mines. His dad would not think of looking there. "Jeff," said Virgil, "I wish we hadn't hid our bikes. They'll never find them back of those bushes. They'll never guess we came up here." "Even if they did find them," Jeff said, "they'll think we went swimming in the slate dump pond and got drowned." Both boys were near to tears now. They were lying down, too tired to move. But worse than fatigue, they were sick at heart. "How are we ever going to get out?" asked Virgil. Jeff gulped. "I don't know," he said. Inside he was praying for guidance. "Hear that?" asked Virgil. "It's rats gnawing. They make tracks as big as the dogs. We'd better not go to sleep. They'll come and bite us." The boys sat up and made noises to scare the rats away. Then Jeff sniffed a strange smell. "Gas," he cried, jumping up. "There's gas comin' from that door," he said. "It's comin' from in there where Trig is. No wonder he went to sleep so quick. That place is full of gas. We've got to get Trig out." Jeff and Virgil made their way into the room. "Where's the light, Trig?" But Trig did not answer. It was so dark inside they had to feel their way to Trig. The carbide light was out, and Trig was sound asleep. They had a hard time waking him. They shook him, but he would not waken. "We got to get out," said Virgil. "There's gas in here. It'll kill us if we breathe it." "What do I care?" said Trig. He was awake now, all right. He refused to get up. He kicked his feet against the wall and cried hysterically. He swore and laughed and cried and called the boys' names. "Get hold of his feet, Virgil," said Jeff. "I'll take his head and arms." Together the two boys tugged and pulled. They brought the fighting, protesting boy out through the door and pushed it shut again. They dropped him on the ground. "Now what we gonna do?" Virgil turned to Jeff. It was Jeff now who had to do the deciding. "We'll stay right here," said Jeff, "until they come for us." He remembered the sharp rocks that had scraped his back, and he was worried for fear the men could not get through, but he did not speak of it to Virgil. There was nothing to do but to wait and hope for the best. Trig was quiet again. Jeff and Virgil lay down by his side and tried to sleep. Water dripped on them, gnats stung them, and a cold freezing wind blew across them. They lay there listening to the rats. They hollered until they got hoarse, hoping someone would hear them. They rested, then hollered again, but only an echo came back. At last they quieted down and slept.